Too sick to continue, have to leave. I don't know how many of you guys are still with us that saw us in our Ecuador days where we were just really going through the washing machine. What do you want to call it, Angie? I wasn't hiding how I looked and how I felt. And it's just a question of transparency and being genuine. You know, when you're not sleeping through the night and it's chronic, it can really mess you up. Now, this is the kind of thing that crops up when we retire overseas, move overseas, you know, maybe go live abroad for a decade or two. That's our plan. And things that you hadn't foreseen, and things that you know, surprises. That's what I'm talking about. So you have these surprises. You didn't have any issues with your health before, but you go abroad, and because of the different environment and the different situation, you know, everything just changes, whether it's altitude, water, air, lack of oxygen, whatever, you name it. Smog, just the environment is just a lot more taxing. Mold, everything, just all of the things. And I'm not saying these things aren't present in USA. I have a friend that's having a lot of difficulty with their son over mold in USA. So these kinds of things can crop up anywhere. But we didn't have any of them crop up for us in USA when we were there. And therefore we had 100% change when we went abroad. It kind of, I don't want to say...
Threw us for a loop.
It threw us for a loop because it wasn't something we had to deal with before. And so we had to learn all of these new ways of coping with our health. And that's what brings me to this video, is that, and especially because we've lived on 3 different continents, you know, like when you're in Europe or Central America or Mexico or South America, there are things that you can do to adapt so that you can stay strong and healthy. And you have to remain flexible. If your go-to, like my go-to thing isn't to run to the doctor. We've made videos, we never went abroad for the quote-unquote healthcare. People still say things like, oh, we went to Portugal because our health insurance expense was $1,500 a month and that's why we went to Portugal. That's not something we've ever done. We've always been self-reliant with our health, just like old-timey folks that used to just know the answer to the different foods and herbs to use, and just a lifestyle in general to be able to avoid diseases and sickness.
Be careful, honey. YouTube will censor if you talk too much about naturalism.
Yeah.
Let's leave that in.
So one of the things that we've defaulted to is just learning the environment, the natural terrain of where we are and what it produces. Like, you know, you have certain things that are a staple in just about everywhere we've been, and that is things like garlic. I mean, you can get garlic, we can get garlic everywhere we've been, we can get garlic. But there are some certain things that you get locally more of, that are produced locally and are, I hesitate to use the term superfood, but are loaded with certain vitamins that help you. And for example, if I was in North America, I would be growing, and I used to grow, kale. You know, kale is an amazing, potent, very, very strong green, just greens in general, but kale is very strong in vitamin A, and things like the basil, kale, and even chicory. In Ecuador, there's an abundance of artichokes, and I was eating artichokes as often as I could, almost on a daily basis, while they were in season. You know, Poland had a lot of berries that were very reasonable. Just whatever happens to be, it's good to have that knowledge of how to stay healthy and how to really boost your immune with foods, as Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine. We subscribe to that and we live that. And so everywhere we've been, we've had to accustom ourselves to what is it that grows locally and therefore is plentiful and therefore is very efficiently available, meaning it's very cheap. So, and in Ecuador it was artichokes. Here in Mexico, interestingly enough, I can get asparagus, and I eat asparagus and drink the juice almost every day.
Avocados too when they're in season.
Avocados, we ate as many avocados as we could in Ecuador. They're not so much in season here in the desert area of Mexico. They were prohibitively expensive at $6 a kilo. They have dropped now to a third of that, so we're eating them again. And so that brings me to this. I don't want to say things that, that isn't available to everyone at all income levels. I don't want to talk about, well, yeah, you can, you can use this, you can use that, and then it's not locally produced, it's not in season, you got to go to the pharmacy to get it, and it's all this complicated. I'm talking about
easy things,
keeping things simple, efficient, and inexpensive. That's what makes life worth living to me, when I can avail myself and figure out what it is that's available locally that fits the prescription, the natural food prescription that I need, and I figure out what that is locally. Like, you go here, you see somebody, and I shouldn't even say that, forget it, just skip it. Nah, because the pharmacies here, it all goes back to a person's view, right, is whether they trust the white coats or whether they trust nature and nature's God. It's like, you see these white coats in the pharmacies here, and then they tell you that every single product in the pharmacy has sugar in it. And it's like, why would anybody, how does somebody not, I have to stop talking about this. And so, yeah, I revert to what works for me. And it's been a learning thing. It's been an ongoing, lifelong interest and pursuit of mine to understand health. So I understand that a lot of people have bought into the delayed life plan, and therefore they really haven't had the time to spend getting to know what makes their body really work. And so I'm not judging. I'm just saying that, when we finally do embark on that retire early lifestyle, remember that we now have the time to spend learning what it is that makes our bodies tick and makes us feel good and makes us feel better. And a natural extension of that thinking is that when we move around, finding out how we can source that nutrition and nutritional boost through locally produced and efficiently available and inexpensively available local foods, then you are in heaven. Because once you've got that going for you, it's no longer about, I've got to go to Portugal because that's where I'm going to get free health care, or I'm going to go to Ecuador because the health care is only $150 a month instead of $1,500. That has no bearing whatsoever for us. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying that you've seen us go through times when we're not feeling as well, and we're not feeling good. And it's not because we're not doing the things we should be doing. It's because the environment that we happen to be in is so taxing on our system, and there isn't anything that you can do about it beyond giving your body what it needs in order to be strong, And so I'm saying, be careful what you listen to when people say and make videos about how, because you can feel better when you remove processed food. You'll feel better. Like, when you remove, and it's not just junk food. One could argue that all processed food is junk food, but junk food is literally, what it is. And then you've got processed foods, things like, and people call them carbs, but carbs is just a general description of processed foods. So clearly, yeah, we've been told over and over that carbs, this and that, but really it's processed food. You know, processed food is not the original state of the food. And well, that's what I'm saying. A lot of times you'll see people, they're not feeling well, and it's because of the processed food. And of course, you remove the processed food and you think, well, I've removed carbs and I feel better, and that's going to be true when you remove or minimize. I've had to change my eating habits because I grew up with eating Italian style food all the time and pigging out on it, and I've had to modify. You see us make gnocchi because gnocchi are mixed with potato, and we make our own because we get to mix the flour and not use 100% white flour, and that's white flour is a processed food. So, and people call that carbs. So just saying that it goes beyond that, the terrain of where you're at and the environment. It's not just what you're ingesting. It is what you're ingesting, but it's also the environment that we're in and what it does to us. And even here in Baja, where there's no altitude to contend with, there's always the endemic area thing that we're constantly pushing back on. And it's interesting because a lot of people that go abroad for specifically, you know, one of the real big pulls is you know, that healthcare thing. But interestingly though, the environments that we end up being in that we're not aware of, it's one of those things that is not, what do you call it, transparent and on the surface, you know, people don't talk about. And so when you go abroad and you're having to deal with this, and it causes a surprise, it causes a change in people's plans. Think about what we're really doing when we leave our comfy area and we remove ourselves. And what we're saying is that we're going to remove ourselves from the area that we're in, and we're going to go to this completely new to us, foreign environment that we think we know what we're getting into. That's what I'm saying here. Never before in history, before the industrial age, have people been able to just catapult themselves halfway across the globe in just like half a day or a day. There's just no end to the surprises that we need to be flexible and be able to adjust. It's really fulfilling to me to be able to adjust in each locale that we've lived and be able to use the locally sourced food as medicine. And that's very satisfying. And we intend to do that till the end. And that's what helps us keep our retire early lifestyle, no matter where we are or what our age is. Whether we're 25 years old or, you know, 75 years old, it doesn't matter. Some things are just sensible and it just works. Well, I hope you got something out of that. Thanks for coming to the video. Have a wonderful day.